Hello. This is Michelle. Welcome back. And I am finally on the very last page of my little advent journal. I'm very excited to have finished this one. It's always, I don't know, I just love the feeling of finishing an old journal and knowing that I've completed something. I think as creatives, we don't always start what we finish what we start. So I always feel like it's quite an accomplishment, and also the excitement of starting a new project. So today's prompt was stripes, and Marlene had this little jar or pot of plants in her Paper Elements book. So I took inspiration from that. I'm going to make a little pot with stripes and some bright bold flowers. Now, this is a warning. If you are very good with painting flowers, you might want to turn away because I'm definitely not. It is something that I always look at other people's painting of flowers, and it's one of those things that I really wish I could do well. But I'd probably have to end up taking a course of some sort to get them to look like flowers. So my flowers are very abstract, but I am pleased with the outcomes. I think that they look kind of like flowers. So, and that makes my heart happy. So I started with drawing the outline of the pot, and then I filled in all of the black bits first because I figured if I wash my paintbrush now with black, it's going to mess up the water and make the water black, which now that I say it doesn't make any sense at all because I washed the brush anyway. Anyway, I did all the black details and then I dried it off because knowing me, I'm sure to smudge something, and I do smudge something even though I was very careful. And now I'm just going in with Ho Ho Ho, Kissy, and Hot Curry. I've also got a little bit of lace out on my palette, and I'm just drawing rough flower shapes, really rough flower shapes. So I first drew in 5, but then I felt, no, I think we need more. So I did 2 more. Again, always sticking with my odd numbers because eyes like to look at odd numbers. And really all I'm doing is just building up layer upon layer, adding color, adding all of the different warm tones on top of each other until I've basically used the paint on my palette. That was kind of the objective. It really wasn't to try and get perfect flowers. I did try to kind of darken the centers and lighten the outer parts of the shapes, but I don't think I was successful. If you are good with flowers, let me know and maybe share a photo. I'd love to see your work. Okay, so now that I've got the painting kind of done, I decided I need to add some leaves, and instead of trying to draw them, I'm going to stamp them out on this little bluish greenish collage sheet from Marlene. I'm also using one of Marlene's stamps, and I'm just going to try and squeeze in 5, well, these are pairs, but the other 2 are single leaves, but basically 5 groups or sections of leaves, again sticking to odd numbers. And now you have the ultimate joy of watching me fussy cut them. Luckily they are really easy to fussy cut, so they did not take too long. And then once I've got them cut out, I will stick them in. So my idea here was to try and cover up a lot of the white space in between the flowers using the leaves. And you'll notice the way that I put the leaves down at first is not the way that it ended up being. but that's okay. That's how our pages evolve. So what I'm just trying to do is just to achieve a little bit of balance. So I feel like there is a little bit of these leaves kind of all over the composition and not just clumped together. For my background, I am just mixing the orange that's left on my palette with a little bit of cheesy, sorry, yes, it's called cheesy. And I'm watering it down, way down, until it's like a watercolor consistency. And I'm just tapping that onto the page. I find that this is actually a much easier way to paint out a background. The paint just feels a little bit easier to move around and to get into smaller spaces. And also, if you go over one of the flowers, it's easy to just dab it off and it's not going to make a huge splat on the flower. So you'll see there that I cleaned off the black in my palette with my wet wipe, and then I proceeded to squash the wet wipe down onto my page. And that's why I ended up with a black blob anyway. Okay, so to add a little bit of detail, I'm going to just use the stem of this little seed pod. Well, I think it's a seed pod, maybe like a poppy flower. And I'm just using the stem and the leaves part to create some interest. And I'm doing that in 3 places. So I'm putting it into my ink, then I'm wiping off what I don't want stamped, and then I'm stamping it down. And now I'm using the little seed pod part to just stamp just that part. And now that I look at it, my flowers do look a little bit like poppies, and I've got the poppy seed pod, so I guess it all worked out in the end. Now I'm going in with my Dio acrylic paint markers from Marlene, and I'm just adding again just all the warm tones, pinks, reds, oranges, and I'm just doing little lines to try and create something that resembles petal shapes. Coloring all my pods with purple. Now they do not look like poppy seeds anymore, but that's okay. I really like that pop of purple and white dots in all the centers of the flowers. That really brought this page to life. And now I'm just going to go and trace around all of the flowers and defining some of those stamped images that I maybe painted over and creating a little bit of movement in the petals. And I'm doing that with black, and I'm adding a little bit of white highlights. I really like having the contrast of black and white elements in a bouquet kind of image like this. I've done a couple of those kind of pages before, which I haven't shared because of my lack of how to paint a flower. Okay, adding a little bit of shadowing at the bottom there, and I'm just using my paint pens to darken some of the edges to make it look like shadows. And now my Stabilo All pencil, and I'm just making a grey shadow on the vase itself and in that shadowy area where the pot is standing. And now I'm just going to use a little bit of cheesy paint through a stencil just to create a little bit of texture in that background, so it's not quite as flat. My sponge was a little bit grubby, so if you look closely, it's not quite yellow, but you know, it's yellow enough. It adds the texture, so I'm happy with that. I also outlined my little pot and made some scribbly lines. And the quote that I got was, the best is yet to come. So I thought that was appropriate to have that as the end of a journal, because obviously I've got other projects going, and now I'm just doing a tiny little bit of asemic writing, journaling about how excited I am to finish this journal. And that is it. Thank you so much for joining me. Keep a lookout for my next project. It is very exciting. I cannot wait to share with you. Bye.